This is the story of Dishaye Stevenson, a 35-year-old mother, caregiver, and entrepreneur, whose life ended in a moment of intimate partner violence. It's also the story of Michael Smith, her husband, the man Dallas police say shot and killed her on October 25, 2023. The case reveals the hidden turmoil inside a marriage that, to outsiders, seemed loving. And it exposes the warning signs, power imbalances, and unspoken dangers that can unfold long before a murder takes place. In this documentary, we begin with their backgrounds, their relationship, and the events that led to the morning Dishaye was found dead in the 1600 block of Murdoch Road. This is part 1. Dishaye Stevenson was 35 years old at the time of her death. She was the mother of a teenage daughter and the primary caregiver for her mother, who was partially paralyzed. Her family describes her as vivacious, caring, and exceptionally hard-working. Some accounts say she was an entrepreneur, juggling financial responsibility, caregiving, and the demands of raising her daughter. Michael Smith was 39. According to several family and community narratives, he and Dishaye married in September 2022, though this date has not been confirmed by major news outlets or court records. What is clear, however, is that by 2023 their marriage was troubled, chaotic behind closed doors, and punctuated by red flags that Dishaye's family now recognizes as signs of escalating danger. When Dishaye and Michael began their life together, they presented an image of affection and stability. But privately, family members say the relationship was turbulent. According to her sister, Jasmine, Michael often showed jealousy, repeatedly accused Dishaye of cheating, and displayed patterns of behavior that deeply worried those closest to her. Despite this, Dishaye continued to give, financially, emotionally, and materially. One family reported example stands out. During a trip to Jamaica the year before her death, she allegedly purchased $10,000 worth of jewelry for Michael. According to Jasmine, this was typical of Dishaye. She generously supported Michael even when the relationship appeared imbalanced. Family members have also suggested that Dishaye shouldered the bulk of wedding-related expenses and ongoing financial responsibilities. These accounts paint a picture of a woman investing heavily in a marriage that, in reality, was fraying under jealousy, suspicion, and hidden conflict. As the months progressed, the tension between Dishaye and Michael reportedly worsened. Jasmine later said there were many red flags, especially in private. These included Michael's jealous accusations, frequent arguments, and what family members describe as behaviors that suggested instability. The marriage showed undeniable signs of deterioration. And in the early morning hours of October 25, the situation reached a fatal point. At around 7:20 a.m. on October 25, 2023, Dallas police responded to a shooting call in the 1600 block of Murdoch Road, near Lincoln Memorial Cemetery in southeast Dallas. When officers arrived, they found Dishaye shot. She died at the scene. From the outset, detectives quickly identified Michael as the primary suspect. Surveillance footage became one of the key pieces of evidence. According to the arrest warrant affidavit, investigators reviewed video from an apartment complex, reportedly where Michael's father lived. The footage shows Dishaye and Michael arriving separately. Dishaye gets into Michael's car. The vehicle remains parked for a period, and the affidavit notes what appears to be a disturbance inside the vehicle, before the two drive away. This detail indicates the possibility of an argument or escalation happening inside the car shortly before the murder. When police later searched Michael's home, they found blood on the front seat of his car. Inside the vehicle, officers recovered a shell casing in the driver's seat and a single sandal matching the one found on Dishaye's body. Multiple guns were also located inside the residence. The physical evidence strongly aligned with the surveillance timeline, strengthening the case against Michael almost immediately. Later that same day, police found and arrested Michael at a nearby barbershop in Dallas. He was booked into Dallas County Jail and charged with murder. His bond was set at $1 million. The case was recorded under number 19052722023. The rapid arrest indicated two things: the strength of the evidence gathered at the scene and the seriousness with which the department handled the case. As far as public reporting shows, there was no extended manhunt, no prolonged search, and no alternative suspect. For Dishaye's family, though, the arrest brought little relief. Jasmine later said publicly, "Why would you take my sister from us?" Like why? Her words reflected not only shock and grief, but confusion about how a marriage that once appeared affectionate could end in murder. Advocacy organizations such as the Black Femicide Prevention Coalition highlighted Dishaye's killing as part of a larger, deeply troubling pattern: Black women suffering disproportionate rates of intimate partner homicide, often with warning signs visible but unaddressed. In the aftermath of the arrest, community narratives circulated that Michael was later sentenced to 55 years in prison. This reported sentence appears on social media and in some advocacy discussions. However, as of the publicly available information referenced for this documentary, that sentencing detail has not been confirmed in major established news outlets or widely published court documents. What is firmly documented is that Michael was charged with murder and held on a $1 million bond, with surveillance evidence, physical evidence, and an eyewitness-informed timeline forming the core of the case against him. Whether the 55-year sentence is ultimately verified or clarified through subsequent public court records is a point that remains open. We will examine the legal proceedings in more depth in Part 2 of this documentary. Even at this early stage in the story, several critical themes emerge. First, Dishaye's death mirrors a common pattern seen in domestic violence homicides: a private deterioration masked by public affection. Family members describe her as deeply giving, emotionally, financially, and materially. This generosity may have created a power imbalance that left her increasingly vulnerable, especially as Michael's jealousy escalated. Second, the footage showing a disturbance inside the car shortly before Dishaye's death suggests the possibility of a confrontation that suddenly turned violent. The details uncovered by police, the blood, the shell casing, the matched sandal, offer a stark picture of how quickly and violently the situation escalated. Third, the systemic dimension cannot be ignored. Dishaye's case is not an isolated incident. Advocates point to broader patterns of femicide and intimate partner violence against Black women, and the ways such dangers can be minimized or overlooked until tragedy occurs. In Part 2, we look deeper into the dynamics of their relationship, the red flags raised by family members, and the systemic gaps that allowed the situation to escalate unnoticed until it became fatal. Publicly, the marriage between Dishaye and Michael appeared affectionate. To acquaintances and on social media, they seemed committed to building a life together. But privately, the picture was different. According to her sister, Jasmine, the relationship had been marked by instability for some time. Michael frequently accused Dishaye of cheating, and his jealousy became a recurring point of tension. The pattern wasn't subtle. Family members say it was a defining feature of the marriage behind closed doors. Nothing in the available record indicates that Dishaye filed police reports or restraining orders, and there's no public documentation of prior arrests related to domestic violence between the two. Yet the family's account of the marriage suggests a volatile dynamic that was escalating long before the day of the murder. A consistent theme in the accounts from Dishaye's family is the imbalance in the marriage, both financially and emotionally. Dishaye worked hard, supported her teenage daughter, and cared for her partially paralyzed mother. On top of that, she provided substantial support to Michael. Family narratives indicate that she may have covered wedding expenses and gave lavish gifts. One notable example is the $10,000 in jewelry she reportedly bought for him during a trip to Jamaica in 2022. These gestures were not isolated, they reflected a pattern. Jasmine framed it simply: Dishaye did everything in her power to show love to her husband. While generosity alone doesn't signify an unhealthy relationship, the combination of financial support, emotional investment, and Michael's recurring jealousy created a dynamic where Dishaye carried the burden, materially and psychologically. As the months went on, this imbalance only deepened. Jealousy is a common predictor of intimate partner violence, and in this case, it was a documented theme within the family's testimony. According to Jasmine, Michael repeatedly accused Dishaye of seeing other men. The marriage, already fragile, became strained by these unfounded claims. The stress of caregiving for her daughter and mother, combined with supporting Michael, left Dishaye stretched thin. Yet she continued to invest in keeping the relationship afloat. Family members now say they saw these accusations as warning signs, but at the time, they didn't know how severe the consequences would become. Another factor raised by some community narratives is substance use. Certain secondary sources and family-level accounts claim that Michael was high on PCP at the time of the shooting or around the time of his arrest. However, this information is not confirmed in major news outlets. Publications such as the Dallas Morning News do not report toxicology findings indicating PCP use. The publicly available arrest warrant affidavit, based on the information provided, does not confirm intoxication, and no official toxicology report has been made public. Because of this, while PCP use is part of community and family discussions about the case, the claim remains unverified in the public record. Its potential relevance to motive or mental state is significant, but until documented by reliable sources, it cannot be formally established. One of the clearest indicators that something was escalating in the hours before the murder comes from surveillance footage reviewed by Dallas police. The video reportedly captured Dishaye and Michael arriving separately at an apartment complex where Michael's father lived. Dishaye then got into Michael's car. The car remained parked for a period long enough to draw investigators' attention. The affidavit states there appears to be a disturbance inside the vehicle. This detail suggests that an argument or confrontation occurred just before they drove away. The footage doesn't show the inside of the car, but the description implies physical or vocal conflict, something that deviated from normal behavior. While the surveillance system couldn't capture what was said, the timing of the disturbance relative to Dishaye's death is critical. Within a short window after this moment, she was found shot on Murdoch Road. Dishaye's killing is tragic on its own terms, but advocates point to it as part of a larger pattern, specifically, the disproportionately high rates of intimate partner homicide among Black women in the United States. Groups such as the Black Femicide Prevention Coalition highlighted her case because the warning signs, jealousy, control, imbalance, and emotional vulnerability, fit into a broader national trend. Many Black women face barriers to seeking help, whether due to stigma, lack of resources, or fear of consequences. Some remain silent to preserve family stability. Others don't recognize the danger because emotional or financial dependence obscures the severity of the situation. Dishaye's role as the caregiver for both her daughter and her disabled mother added additional layers of responsibility and pressure. Advocates note that women in caregiving roles often feel compelled to maintain relationship stability, even when warning signs are mounting. The lack of widespread media attention on the case also reflects systemic disparities. While community members and social platforms amplified her story, major outlets provided limited coverage after the initial homicide report. As of the information available, several aspects of the case remain unclear. These gaps matter because they affect our understanding of the relationship and the events leading to the murder. First, the toxicology question. Without a publicly released report, the role of PCP, or any substance, cannot be confirmed. Second, the legal conclusion. Community sources widely report that Michael was sentenced to 55 years in prison. But as of the information reviewed, major outlets like WFA or the Dallas Morning News have not published a sentencing article verifying this. Third, the details of their marriage. Some community accounts say they wed on September 11, 2022. But again, no major press source confirms this date, and court documents available to the public do not specify it. Fourth, the deeper financial dynamics. Beyond the noted jewelry gift, there is no public documentation detailing how much financial responsibility Dishaye carried, and whether money was a source of conflict. Fifth, any prior police interaction. There is no widely available record of earlier domestic disturbance calls, although family testimony indicates that private conflict was substantial. These unknowns create a partial picture, one grounded in reliable facts, but with areas that require fuller legal transparency to complete. What is clear is that on the morning of October 25, a confrontation occurred. Surveillance footage captured the beginning. Physical evidence confirmed the outcome. And by the end of that day, Michael was in custody, charged with murder under case number 1905272023, held on a $1 million bond. In Part 3, we examine the legal process, the affidavit, the forensic findings, the charges, and what is known, and not known, about the reported sentencing. Part 3. The evidence and the courtroom. In Parts 1 and 2, we established the relationship history between Dishaye Stevenson and Michael Smith, the red flags that preceded the killing, and the events leading up to the morning of October 25, 2023. Now, in Part 3, we examine the evidence that formed the backbone of the murder case, the arrest warrant affidavit, and what is publicly known about the legal proceedings and the reported, but not fully verified, sentence. At 7:20 a.m., police found 35-year-old Dishaye Stevenson shot in the 1600 block of Murdoch Road in southeast Dallas. She was pronounced dead at the scene. From the moment officers arrived, the circumstances pointed toward homicide. There was no indication of self-harm or an unknown attacker fleeing the area. And within a short window of time, investigators identified Michael Smith, her husband, as the primary suspect. But police didn't rely on assumptions. The case moved quickly because the evidence accumulated rapidly. A critical piece of evidence came from surveillance footage at an apartment complex, reportedly where Michael's father lived. According to the arrest warrant affidavit, Dishaye and Michael arrived separately at the complex. Dishaye got into Michael's car. The vehicle remained parked for an extended period. The affidavit states there appears to be a disturbance inside the vehicle. The couple then drove off. The surveillance video does not capture audio or the full interior of the car, but the recorded movement and behavior were enough for detectives to determine that something significant occurred while the couple was still parked, likely an argument escalating into physical conflict. This footage established a timeline. Dishaye was alive when she entered the car. A disturbance occurred. Minutes later, she was found shot. The next category of evidence came directly from Michael's vehicle, evidence that investigators discovered when they executed a search at his residence. Inside his car, police reported finding blood in the front seat, a fired shell casing in the driver's seat, a single sandal matching the one found on Dishaye's body. Each of these findings is significant. Blood evidence. The presence of blood in the front seat indicates that the shooting likely took place inside the vehicle, consistent with the disturbance caught on camera and the fact that Dishaye was found shortly after leaving the apartment complex. Fired shell casing. A casing in the driver's seat ties the firearm discharge to the interior of the car. While the type of gun is not detailed in the information available, the casing itself is physical proof of a shot fired in the immediate space where Michael and Dishaye were last seen together. Matching sandal. The sandal found in the car matches the one recovered on Dishaye's body. This link places her inside the vehicle at the time of the shooting and supports the surveillance evidence placing her there moments before her death. Collectively, these findings formed a tight evidentiary chain. There was no physical indication that another suspect entered the car or that Michael left Dishaye with anyone else after the disturbance. Period. When police searched Michael's residence, they located multiple firearms. While the available information does not specify whether any of them matched the murder weapon, the presence of several guns contributed to the seriousness with which police approached the investigation. Their recovery also provided additional forensic material that could be compared to the casing found in the car. At minimum, these weapons indicated access to deadly force, an important detail in assessing both opportunity and capability. Later that same day, police located Michael at a nearby barbershop. He was arrested without reported incident and booked into Dallas County Jail. His bond was set at $1 million, reflecting the severity of the charge and the strength of the evidence. Case documentation lists the matter as case number 1905272023. There has been no publicly available statement indicating that Michael gave a confession, explanation, or detailed account of the events. The information available does not include interrogation transcripts or summaries from law enforcement. Some community and family level reports allege that Michael was high on PCP, angel dust, at the time of the shooting or at the time of his arrest. However, major news outlets, including the Dallas Morning News, have not confirmed PCP in toxicology. The publicly accessible arrest affidavit does not state that Michael was intoxicated. No official agency has released a toxicology report confirming drug use. Because of this, the PCP narrative remains unverified in formal public records. It may be relevant to understanding his behavior or motive, but without official documentation, it remains part of community reporting, not judicial evidence. Public reporting on the courtroom process for this case is limited, and no full trial transcript or detailed docket summary is available in the information provided. What is known? Michael was charged with murder. He remained in custody with a $1 million bond. The case had substantial surveillance and forensic evidence, giving prosecutors a clear evidentiary foundation. Community sources widely circulated the claim that Michael was later sentenced to 55 years in prison. However, this sentencing detail has not been confirmed in major legacy media, including WFAA or the Dallas Morning News. Does not yet appear in widely accessible public court documentation. Until such documentation appears, the sentence remains probable but not fully verified. This reflects a broader issue. Cases involving Black women often receive limited ongoing media coverage after the initial homicide report. As a result, the public must rely on community reporting or social media for updates, which may or may not align with official records. Even without a fully documented sentencing record, the available evidence was substantial. Surveillance footage documenting the last moments before the killing. Physical evidence in the car linking the shooting to Michael. A match sandal placing Dishaye inside the vehicle. Blood and a shell casing confirming a violent incident. The short time frame between their departure and Dishaye's discovery. The lack of any alternative suspect or contradictory physical evidence. From a legal standpoint, this combination forms the core of a strong prosecution case in a domestic homicide. Circumstantial evidence, physical evidence, and behavioral patterns align to tell a consistent story. Dishaye was alive, in distress, and in Michael's vehicle shortly before being found shot. The evidence inside that vehicle supported the charge that he killed her. In the final part of this documentary, we examine what this case represents, the broader patterns of intimate partner violence, why Dishaye's death resonates beyond one family, and what her story reveals about the risks many women face long before a homicide occurs. In the previous chapters, we traced the relationship between Dishaye Stevenson and Michael Smith, the red flags that preceded the killing, the physical and surveillance evidence, and the development of the murder case. In this final part, we step back from the crime itself and examine what Dishaye's death reveals about broader, systemic patterns that affect not only her family but thousands of women who face intimate partner violence every year. Domestic violence homicides rarely occur without warning signs. The same themes recur again and again: jealousy, escalating arguments, financial or emotional imbalance, and a partner who becomes increasingly controlling. Dishaye's case reflects this pattern clearly. Her sister Jasmine described many red flags that were visible inside the marriage but not always recognized for their danger. Accusations of cheating, emotional volatility, and periods of tension formed a backdrop to a relationship that, in public, could appear affectionate. These contradictions are common in domestic violence cases. Outward appearances hide internal case. Loved ones may see concerning dynamics but not have enough information, or enough authority, to intervene. Dishaye carried a heavy load long before her relationship turned fatal. She was a mother to a teenage daughter and the primary caregiver for her partially paralyzed mother. She also worked hard, described by family as dedicated, loving, and generous. Beyond these responsibilities, she supported Michael financially and emotionally. Reports indicate she paid for significant expenses and gave expensive gifts, such as $10,000 in jewelry during a trip to Jamaica. This level of giving, layered on top of caregiving responsibilities, creates vulnerabilities that are not always understood. When a woman is taking care of children, a disabled parent, and a partner simultaneously, she may feel pressure to maintain stability at any cost. She may also minimize or rationalize warning signs in order to keep a fragile household functioning. Dishaye's story highlights how emotional labor, financial strain, and caregiving roles can intersect with intimate partner dynamics in ways that increase risk. One of the clearest indicators of escalating danger in intimate partner violence is accusatory jealousy. According to Jasmine, Michael repeatedly accused Dishaye of cheating, an accusation that was not supported by evidence but became a recurring feature of their interactions. In domestic violence research, jealousy is highly correlated with the risk of homicide. When mistrust becomes an obsession and a partner begins projecting insecurity onto the other person, it can escalate to confrontation and, in some cases, violence. The surveillance footage showing a disturbance inside the vehicle before the two drove away on the morning of the killing underscores the escalation already underway that day. The conflict wasn't new, it was the continuation of a pattern. In many community discussions, drug use, specifically PCP, was mentioned as a factor in Michael's behavior. Cases like Dishaye's often receive limited coverage after the initial homicide report. Major news organizations provide early information but frequently do not follow through with detailed updates on court proceedings, plea deals, or sentencing. This creates a visibility gap. Advocacy groups, such as the Black Femicide Prevention Coalition, have emphasized that Black women are disproportionately victims of intimate partner homicide, yet their stories often fade from mainstream attention. This isn't simply about media bias, it shapes public understanding of domestic violence. When sentencing outcomes, court details, and systemic failures go unreported, the larger lessons remain obscured. Families impacted by these deaths feel their loved ones were not only killed but overlooked afterward. Dishaye's case reflects this pattern. The reported 55-year sentence for Michael Smith appears in social media circles but has not been confirmed in widely accessible court records or major local news updates. The most painful question in intimate partner homicide is always, could this have been prevented? In Dishaye's case, family members saw red flags but did not fully grasp the danger. This is common. Many families witness conflict but do not assume the risk of homicide. Without previous police reports, restraining orders, or a known history of violence, a lethal outcome may feel unimaginable. But the systemic gaps are broader. Lack of accessible mental health and conflict resolution services for couples dealing with jealousy and instability. Limited domestic violence education for families who need help identifying escalating danger. Underreporting of intimate partner violence in marginalized communities due to fear, stigma, or lack of trust in law enforcement. Insufficient public data on sentencing and prosecution in such cases, leaving communities without clarity on legal outcomes. Dishaye's death fits a pattern where warning signs existed, but the mechanisms for intervention failed long before law enforcement became involved. Dishaye Stevenson was more than the circumstances of her death. She was a mother, a daughter, a caregiver, and a woman who, according to family, loved deeply and gave generously. Understanding her story means examining not only what happened but what repeatedly happens across the country. Her case underscores how jealousy and possessiveness escalate into fatal violence, how caregiving and financial pressures compound vulnerability, how community narratives clash with incomplete official records, how Black women face disproportionate risks in intimate partner homicide, how media silence can obscure critical lessons. Dishaye's story is part of a national problem that extends far beyond one tragedy. Preventing cases like this requires more than awareness, it requires structural change. Better domestic violence education for families. Greater access to counseling and intervention resources. Transparent court reporting. Stronger support networks for caregivers and women under emotional or financial strain. Advocacy groups continuing to highlight the stories that would otherwise be lost. Dishaye's death was not inevitable, but it was predictable within the pattern of intimate partner homicide. Recognizing those patterns is the first step toward prevention. The life of Dishaye Stevenson cannot be reduced to the morning of October 25, 2023. Her story begins long before that day and continues through the lessons her case forces us to confront. This concludes our 4-part documentary on Dishaye Stevenson. A story of love, warning signs, systemic failures, and the urgent need for change. Thank you for staying through the final part of this series. If you want to follow this case and others like it as new developments unfold, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss the next update.